A long time ago, my guitar teacher shared with me a simple concept that jump-started me on my path to total fretboard enlightenment. And on today's episode, I share it with you guys. Hey there kids, it's your good buddy Uncle Ben. As a lot of you guys know, I've taught guitar lessons for a very long time, and probably the most common problem that I see players of all different skill levels face is learning and understanding the fretboard of the guitar. But early on in the days of my playing, when I was merely a young shred-eye knight apprentice, my guitar teacher, the great Benjamin Franklin, not that Benjamin Franklin, a different Benjamin Franklin, shared with me a really simple concept that opened my eyes to just how easy it is to navigate the fretboard of the guitar. It's a simple concept that you can get down in like 2 seconds, but then spend, weeks or even years learning how to get the most out of it. And once you do, you'll be able to play any chord progression or any scale in any key in whatever position you happen to be in on the neck at that time. It really changed the way that I play guitar, and I'm sure it's going to work wonders for you too. As always, downloadable tabs and charts, as well as a bevy of bonus lessons, backing tracks, and more are available to everybody who supports my channel over on my Patreon page, patreon.com/Ben Eller Guitars. But let's say you want access to that awesome bonus lesson as well as the tabs and charts and stuff, but maybe you don't have a Patreon account or anything like that set up. I got you covered. For about the past year or so, my good buddy Brandon Suttles has been fighting an extremely rare form of blood cancer. In order to help pay for his ever-increasing medical bills, his family and friends set up a very special GoFundMe campaign that I've included a link for down in the video description below. And I'm going to give you access to the tabs and charts as well as the bonus lesson if you donate anything at all to Brandon's GoFundMe page. It doesn't matter how big or small your donation is. Take a screenshot with proof of your donation to Brandon's campaign and then email that to me over at benellerguitars@gmail.com. Just be sure to put GoFundMe or something like that in the subject line, that way I can find you in my inbox. After I get your screenshot, I'll email you the link to the bonus video and all the other goodies. So support my channel on Patreon or support my buddy Brandon in his fight against cancer and start reaping the benefits today. Thanks. I'm getting these heavenly tones today by using my Sur Alt T running through the Fractal Audio Axe Effects 3. I've also always found I can improve my tones in the studio and on stage by taking a DoD grunge pedal and not using it. So I can sum up this game-changing fretboard hack in 4 words. Every note is everywhere. And here's what I mean by that. It doesn't matter what position you're in. Within a 4-finger or 4-fret span, which is always comfy no matter where you are, you have all 12 notes available to you at all times. So that means if you take your arm hand here and just slap it down in any random position and think of a note, it's in there somewhere. To follow along with this lesson more easily, I want you guys to pull up a fretboard chart that has all the notes on all the strings on it, or use the one that I provided in the Patreon download. Let's start off small by talking about single notes. Let's just choose a random note, like let's say A. And then let's choose a random 4-fret span on the guitar. I landed here in the 2nd position, so let's start there. Now within this little range of 6 strings and 4 frets, I can actually find a bunch of different A notes. Most of you guys probably found this one first on the low E string. You also know you can find that on the high E string. But I can also find that A note right here on the G string, fret number 2. Let's say I happen to land this time in the 6th position. So I'm using frets number 6, 7, 8, 9. There's not a lot of A's right there, but there is one right here on the 4th string of the guitar. Let's say my hand was in the 9th position. I can find an A note right here on the 5th string. I can find one right here on the 2nd string. Again, it doesn't matter where you are on the neck. Somewhere there within a 4-fret span, you can find the note that you're after. I find this is a great mindset to adopt because as guitar players, we tend to get very zony with the fretboard of the guitar, where we think about, A minor pentatonic is only existing up here at fret number 5, or a G chord is only existing at fret number 3, when in reality the notes to make all of those things are everywhere all over the neck. You just gotta learn to play the ball where it lies. So after my guitar teacher showed me that idea and it blew my mind, I started trying to expand that into, say, finding chords in any position. Let's take a really common chord, like G major. A G major chord is merely the combination of the notes in its triad, which are G, B, and D. We can take those notes and put them in any order we want to. It could be D, G, B, B, D, G, whatever. As long as those three notes, it's still a G major chord. When we think of a G chord, most players tend to think about the third position, so let's get ourselves away from that and put ourselves up here in position 5. So we're going to have access to the notes on frets 5, 6, 7, and 8. Okay, so the first note that we need is a G. So let's find that one right here on the 4th string. There's a G note. Next note in that G triad is B. I have access to a couple of different B's in this position. Let's go with the one that's on the high E string, so G, B. The other note in the triad is a D note. Again, I got a couple of those too, but I'm going to use the one here on the 3rd string, 7th fret. So I end up with a voicing of G major that goes G, B, D. That gives us that kind of Eric Johnson-y spread triad sort of sound, which is really cool. But if I wanted a lower, thicker voicing of that chord, I could also voice it like this. That is G, B, and D on the bottom strings of the guitar. Now, like I said, this is in a different order. G is not the bass note anymore, right? The B note is. But that some combination of G, B, and D will always sound like a G chord. I always tell people that building a chord is like building a bowl of cereal, right? There's 3 things that go inside of that bowl: milk, cereal, and a spoon. And you can put them in the bowl in that order or change it up if you want to and be one of those diabolical bastards that pours the milk first, puts the cereal in, and then the spoon. Either way, you end up with a tasty bowl of breakfasty goodness. So it doesn't matter if we're playing GBD or GBD, it's still a G chord. I like the sound of this voicing right here too. With this one, I found the G note here, the B note down low, and the D note here on the 3rd string. Let's say I was in the 7th position, well away from this sort of home base of fret number 3, and I needed to make a G chord. I still have tons of options to find those notes. I could find a G note right here on the 2nd string, a B note on the 1st string, and the D note here on the 3rd string. It's kind of your familiar, sort of D major looking shape like that, but I'm still getting the notes G, B, and D. If I'm in the 7th position, I have access to fret number 10 as well right here, where I could find a G note, then a B note right here, a D note on my 3rd string, and even a high root note up here on the 2nd string. But this isn't limited to just major chords, this also works for minor chords as well. So let's say I was playing around with like an A minor voicing and I needed another way to play that, maybe for like a little arpeggiation thing or just a layering idea. So an A minor chord is A, C, E, and again I can find all 3 of those notes in any position on the guitar. Let's jump up here to the 7th position again. 7, 8, 9, 10, that's what I have access to. I can find an A note here on the 4th string, a C note here on the 1st string, and then an E note right here on the 3rd string. Again, kind of that Eric Johnson sound, really cool, nice and clear. I'm also a big fan of this sound right here. There's A, the C is down low, and the E note is right here on the G string. This even works for somewhat obscure chord types like this B diminished. That chord is a combination of the notes B, D, and F, which of course I can find anywhere on the guitar. Let's say I was all the way up here in the 13th position of the guitar and I needed to find those notes. I could easily find a B note right here on the 3rd string, a D note right here, then an F on the 1st string if I wanted to. I could add in a low B note here on the 5th string for a little bit more body. All this to say, it doesn't matter what chord it is you're playing or what position you're in, you can find a way to play it no matter where you are. So after I got comfy with that concept, I started taking simple chord progressions and figuring out different ways to play them in other areas of the neck. Let's take, for example, probably the most used chord progression in all of guitardom, G, C, D, G. So our G chord, as we said, is the notes G, B, D. A C chord is made up of the notes C, E, G, and our D chord is made up of the notes D, F sharp, and A. Let's say that I wanted to play those all here in the 3rd position without using any of our familiar cowboy chord shapes. So again, I got access to everything on 3, 4, 5, and 6. My G chord is up first, that's G, B, D. I'll find those notes like this. Here's a G note, here's a B, here's a D, and then up top, here's another G note. So there's my G major chord. Now when it's time to go to C, I might play it like this. Again, C is a combination of C, E, and G, right? Well, there's a C note, there's an E note, there's a G note, and just to thicken it up, I can also add in a G note here on the 4th string. I like this already because it shows you how that G note is present in both chords, up high and in the bass too. And now it's time to go to our D major, D, F sharp, and A. Check this out. You can find a D note right here in your 2nd string, right? The A note of the chord is right here on the 1st string, so the other note that we need is F sharp. which we can find right here on the 4th fret of the 3rd string. Again, I love that kind of inverted sound like that, where D isn't the bass, F sharp is the bass, right? Because then when we go back to G, you hear how it kind of steps in. You kind of get that voice leading effect, you know, whenever you voice those chords that way. So all together we end up with G, C, D, G. Let's do that same progression again, this time at the 7th position. I'm mainly going to be using the high strings of the guitar here because a lot of players get used to finding all their bass notes on those bottom strings anyway, and I want to kind of break you of that habit and get used to looking for notes even on the thin strings. So we got access to 7, 8, 9, and 10. Let's start with the G chord. So again, G, B, D, right? Let's find it like this. Here's a G note, here's a B note, there's a D note right there on the 3rd string. Again, this is our familiar D chord shape again. I'm also going to add in the B note right here on the D string. That way you get that nice first inversion sound. So now it's time to go to a C, which is C, E, G, right? Well, if I take that note right there and move it up to fret number 10, which is in range for me right now, I can find my C note, here's my E note, my G, and then my C again. Listen how you got that nice ascending melody up top when you play those chords that way. Now it's time to go to our D chord, right? D, F sharp, A. Well, here at the 7th fret, I can find all 3 of those notes. There's D, there's F sharp, there's A, right? And I can also get a high D note up there at the 10th fret of the high E string. That gives us a nice, bright, clear D sound. So if we play that progression, we end up with G, C, D, G. And again, when you play it that way, you get that nice melody happening up top that you don't get if you just know the familiar voicings. When you start thinking this way, you start thinking more like how a keyboard or a piano player plays, where they don't have to use the entire range of their instrument to play chords. Like, they don't make chord progressions happen by doing this on their instrument. They can sit in one spot and play around with all those different inversions and stuff because they know that under their fingers they have all 12 notes at all times, just like we do. And when you start incorporating this into your own playing, you'll start getting all those nice little voice leading things just like a good piano player does too. Let's do that one more time here at the 10th position of the guitar. So our G chord, G, B, D, I might find like this. Again, I've got G, B, D all happening right there at the 12th fret. I'll go ahead and get that high D note up top here too because it sounds nice. When it comes time for my C chord, I could find those notes really easily right there. C, E, G. Those are the notes of the C chord, right? If I wanted to, I guess I could get that 13th up there on the B string if I wanted, but I'll go with that 3-note spread triad voicing again. Then when it's time to go to D, D, F sharp, A, those are all right there under my fingers here. D, F sharp, A, D. And I can play through that progression and make it sound quite nice. So just think about all the cool stuff you're going to be able to do once you figure out how to play G, C, D and all those different positions across the neck, and how you could string those chords together in really unusual ways to make some cool sounds. I could have something that starts off really high up the neck and works its way all the way down, going through all the different positions you could play those chords in. G, C, D, G, C, D, G, C, D, I think one of the best ways that you can practice this concept is to take a song that's just a simple repeating chord progression, like this one. Figure out all the notes that go inside of those chords and then just plop yourself down in some random position and figure out how to play that progression. You get the idea. Just pick out a simple chord progression, choose a position to land in on the guitar, and use your note chart right there to help you figure out all the different ways you could find those notes within any 4-fret span. This concept literally changed the way that I play guitar, and I know it will for you too, so good luck. Thanks again so much for watching this video. Gain access to the backing tracks, bonus lessons, and all that other stuff by supporting my channel on Patreon, or supporting one of my best buds in his fight against cancer by clicking on Brandon's GoFundMe link in the video description below. Be sure to like this video, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications every time I upload a new slice of fried gold right here. Thanks again for watching. Now go play some guitar. Less clicking, more picking.